G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Caitlin and I'm an American living in beautiful Sydney, Australia. I moved over here from America a year and a half ago and I can't believe I've lived in Australia for this long. There are some good things and some bad things about moving to Australia that some people just don't tell you, and some things you won't find out until you actually move over here yourself. So today I'm sharing some of the good and some of the bad that I've run into since moving over here to Australia and living here for a year and a half. So if you want to see the good and the bad, grab a bicky, grab a cuppa, and let's get right into this video. Let's start off with something good and something positive, and that is the paid leave and paid sick leave that you get over here in Australia. Over here, if you work a full-time permanent position, you are entitled to 4 weeks of leave. That is a minimum, and you're also entitled to sick leave as well. Plus, on top of that, you actually get annual leave loading, which I think is like 17.5%. So if you take your annual leave time, you're getting an additional 17.5% during that time period. Plus, one thing I absolutely love is long service leave. If you work with a company for 10 years or more, you get 3 months of paid time off. Like, imagine just going on a paid 3-month vacation. How incredible does that sound? I know it's very common for a lot of other countries to have longer paid vacation leave. Some even have longer paid vacations in Australia, but coming from the States, it was a very pleasant shock for me seeing how much paid vacation time I got, how much sick leave I got, and that annual leave loading and long service leave were even a thing. Now, let's move to something a little bit more negative because we got to balance this out a little bit, guys. For me, it's been a struggle to find employment because I don't have permanent residency yet, or citizenship, obviously. Now, to get permanent residency, I could get it tomorrow, I could get it before this video films, or I could have to wait 3 to 4 years to get it. There is such a level of uncertainty when it comes to visas over here. They take so long to process. You never know when it's going to be processed, and in the case of the partner visa that I'm on, there's 2 stages. There's temporary residency and then there's permanent residency. I haven't even looked at my temporary residency application yet. It has been sitting as received status for the last 9 months. Nobody's picked it up, and there's no way to call the DHA, the Department of Home Affairs, and get a status update. And that's just for the temporary one. For most jobs out here, because I work in policy, which is very government adjacent and government aligned, you have to have at least permanent residency to work in most places. And I'm not even talking about government agencies. For most of those, you need citizenship. But it can be so difficult to find jobs in certain fields and certain sectors. Imagine if you were working in government for another country and then move over. You're not going to be able to get a government job, especially in most departments, until you get citizenship. In some cases, they'll let you have it if you have PR, but it really does depend on the department, depends on your job, and obviously it depends on your skill set. But if you're not coming over on a skilled visa where you're going to get permanent residency right away, it is a very, very frustrating situation to be in, because you could be like me in limbo and just watch these incredible job opportunities pass you by just because you don't have permanent residency yet. All because nobody has bothered to pick up your completed application over at the DHA. It's a very frustrating situation. So again, balancing everything out, the quality of living over here in Australia is incredible. And again, I'm kind of fortunate that I grew up in America because I was raised in a house where we at least had access to good education, access to healthcare. Granted, it was always expensive healthcare because it's the way the American system is, but we at least had access to basic necessities, and they were pretty readily available. And over here in Australia, things are pretty readily available. You can go to the grocery store very easily for the most part. Maybe not so much if you live in the really rural and remote areas, but if you live anywhere, even out in the bush, it's pretty easy to go to a Woolies or a Coles out here. Education's free for kids all the way up to the year 12. Go to public schools. Obviously, you can pay to go to private schools, but public schools exist for free. Healthcare, there's Medicare here. Citizens and most permanent residents are covered by Medicare over here. And there's some countries where they even have reciprocal healthcare agreements. So if you're from, like, I think it's a list of 11 countries, you can come over to Australia and your Medicare basically translates without having to worry about what your visa status is. On top of that, you don't have the same level of hustle that you do over in the States. There's a really good work-life balance over here. Even if you have terrible managers and whatnot, at the end of the day, you still get your 4 weeks of annual leave, you still get your sick leave, and the reality is they can't stop you from taking your leave. So for the most part, there's a really good quality of life over here in Australia that I so appreciate. And even though I was lucky over in the States to have some of those exact same things, it feels like everything has just been amplified and it's just better over here. For another downside, visiting friends and family is expensive and it's kind of an emotional roller coaster, to be honest. Unless your family lives in maybe New Zealand or somewhere in Southeast Asia, you're going to have to pay for an expensive flight if you are going to go out there and see family. And if you have, God forbid, a funeral that you have to attend, imagine sitting on a 15-hour flight from Sydney to LA, and then in my case it would be another 5 hours from LA to Philly, on your way to go to a funeral. Like, what if that's your parent? What if that's your sibling? What if that's somebody who you're really close to, a good friend? Trying to hold all of that emotion in for a good 24 hours of flying on top of the regular stress that you're dealing with and the expenses of a last minute flight. It is emotionally draining and financially draining to go and visit friends and family. Now, if you're going just to visit, if you're going over for somebody's wedding or a happy occasion, you don't have quite the same level of emotional toll, but at the end of the day, you still have to leave and come back to Australia. And somebody who's just done that very recently, it is very difficult to give everybody that last hug and not know if you're going to see them again anytime soon. Like, there's a chance I might not see my family for a couple more years. We just don't know what's down the track. So you have to have the emotional fortitude to sort of hold yourself together and know that you'll see them again. It just might not be for a very long time. And it does help that these day and age we have things like video calls, WhatsApp, video chats. It makes things so much easier than it would have even just 15 years ago. But it doesn't always make it easy. But it doesn't alleviate some of the stress and the really difficult emotions that you have to process when you're leaving your friends and family behind for an unknown period of time. Another negative is you can't always get the comfort items that you grew up with at home. I was able to bring back some frozen foods, some frozen treats from home that I can't get through USA Foods or are very Philly specific, so they don't carry it. But my friends can't ship me a Stock's pound cake when it takes 2 weeks to ship something over from the States. It's not like I can get anything that's frozen that I can't get at USA Foods, because the reality is it's tough to ship anything frozen over, at least not without it being incredibly, ridiculously expensive. And it involves a lot of planning and frankly a lot of inconvenience on friends and family back home just to send me things. There are some items on Amazon that I can get very easily over in the States that I can't get here or are incredibly expensive to get over here. There are books on Kindle that I can get easily over in the States, but for some reason I can't get them over here in Australia. There are all these little things that can be so incredibly frustrating, and you feel really defeated when time and time again you want to get something, a comfort item, and it's just not available. It's tough when you can't get the foods that you love from home or the beauty products that you're used to, or your friends and family are talking about a new book or a new movie that they watched that just isn't available over here in Australia yet. It's not so much like FOMO, fear of missing out. It's really just that feeling of being an outsider all over again. Your friends and family are moved on, they're doing something else, they're doing something different, and you're just sitting there watching because something isn't available where you live now. Over here you obviously have your basic needs, your basic necessities. You go into a Coles and Woolies, they'll have comfort foods. You can get mac and cheese and things like that over here. Whatever your kind of comfort food is. For me, it's always been sweets, and sometimes it's a little bit tough when some big occasion comes up and you really want that babka that family used to get around Christmas, or that Stock's pound cake that we used to get for people's birthdays. Knowing that there is nothing like that over here, or at least nothing that tastes anything like that, is a little bit tough, because some days you really just want those comfort foods or comfort items and you're just not going to get them over here. Back to something positive. I don't know if you can hear them outside, but the beautiful wildlife over here is incredible. The birds over here are gorgeous. I've seen kangaroos, I've seen wallabies, and let me tell you, as an American, they are so cool to see. I don't care if I sound like an American tourist to people, I still point out if I ever see a kangaroo, I get so excited. There's so much wildlife that is just in Australia. You're not going to find kangaroos or koalas anywhere else in the world. Just walking around and taking in the gum trees and seeing rainbow lorikeets flying around, and you know what? I don't care how disgusting they are and how obnoxious they are. I love bin chickens. I think they're hilarious. They are so funny looking. Like I can't get over the fact that bin chickens even exist. They just look so silly. But I just love the wildlife over here. It's such an incredible part of Australia, and even if you live in the city, you still see this wildlife. You feel like you're actually in nature. Even if you are in the most concrete jungle area of the Sydney CBD, you still feel exposed to wildlife out here. Another bad is you're not going to get a lot of sympathy from Aussies when you're talking about things like this. And I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of videos like this up on YouTube. One, people like seeing more positive videos when it comes to Australia and just moving to Australia in general. But the reality is Aussies don't really want to hear you talk about how tough it is to move over. Between their she'll be right mate attitude and their just general disdain for complaining and whinging, they're not really going to care if you start talking about how difficult it is moving over here. There's this mentality of, well, you're the one that moved over, you chose this, you did this. And while all of that is true, it really does minimize the struggles that a lot of people go through moving overseas. And whatever your struggles are, they are perfectly valid. Whatever your emotions are moving over here, they are completely valid, because it is such a huge transition. It is such a shift. It's a shock to your brain. It's a shock to your body. And it's something that really does take a lot of time to adjust to. So Aussies might not have ever gone through something like this. They might not be that sympathetic towards it. So this is one of those times where it might be best, if you know any like meetup groups, or if you're on any sort of Facebook groups, finding people from either your home country or similar countries, or just finding expat groups in general where you can rely on people and lean on people who understand these struggles, can help so much with your mental health when you move over here. So don't expect Aussies to always understand and sympathize. It doesn't mean that they don't feel a little bit bad for you, but when you grow up with a culture that has this she'll be right mate attitude and talks about whinging palms, you're going to feel like you're complaining, when the reality is a lot of the stuff you're saying isn't really complaining. You're just trying to ventilate how frustrating and difficult it is to be over here some days. And another thing that you'll find a little bit tough is making friends with Aussies at first. Like, I've been over here for a year and a half. I'm starting to make friends with people. I'm building up my friendship circles and my friendship groups over here, and I do have Aussies in those groups. But when you first move over, don't expect to immediately click with some sort of Aussie friend group over here. A lot of them have been friends since childhood, since high school. Doesn't mean that Aussies aren't friendly. Aussies are some of the most friendly people out there, but you'll hear the saying over and over again, and it does hold a lot of weight to it, that Aussies are friendly, but they're not your friends. It takes a long time to be friends with Aussies, and you know what? If you're going to stay over here for a long time, it's worth building those connections, fostering those friendships, and trying to build those foundations. But if you're over here for a short time, especially if you're over here on a student visa or a backpacking visa, I can see just how difficult it is, and really, really sympathize with people who are only over here for a short period of time. Especially if you're introverted like I am, it can be so tough putting yourself out there and meeting people. But it is so worth it in the end, especially if you're planning on staying for the long term, to try to put yourself out there, to start building friendships, because it is going to take time. The last thing, and I wanted to end this on a positive note, is that living in Australia is whatever you make it out to be. So many of these things that I've listed, good and bad, really come down to your mindset. If you move to Australia and you have this negative feeling towards it, are you really going to notice how beautiful the rainbow lorikeets are and how cool it is to see kangaroos when you're driving out in the bush? If you come over with just this high expectation and always positive mindset, if you mention anything negative, sometimes you're going to be really, really shocked when people push back at that, and you feel like maybe there is something wrong with you for complaining. Maybe things really are that good. It's so easy to get swept up in whatever emotion you're feeling, and you're going to have good days and bad days. You're going to have highs and lows when you move over here. That's just part of life, no matter where you live. Didn't you have highs and lows when you lived in your home country after all? So living in Australia is whatever you make it out to be. You can do so many things here. Australia has some incredible opportunities, and it might not be as easy for you as it is for people who were born and raised here, or people who came over on a different visa and already have permanent residency, or people who knew Aussies and were able to meet friends earlier. Remember, everybody's situation is different, and living in Australia is whatever you make it out to be. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about this, is that even though things might take time, the reality is there's very little holding you back here. There's so many opportunities out here whether it be for career or family or friends or love, because I moved over here for an Aussie. There are so many open doors over here. You just have to look around and figure out what you want to do, where you want to go, and what you want your Australian life to look like. So that's it for this video, you guys, sharing some of the good and the bad of what it's like actually moving to Australia. What did you think? Did anything on this list surprise you at all? And is there anything you think that I missed? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. I really do appreciate the support, you guys. It helps me out so much, and I so appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.